Okay, so we've talked about the alliance systems. Now it's worth looking at them on a map, and we can see here we have these countries in red. So this is the Triple Alliance: Germany, Austria, Hungary. I mentioned Italy dropping out, and here we see Turkey. So this is the Ottoman Empire that's going to replace them. On the other side, we have the competing Triple Entente. So we've got Great Britain, France, and Russia here. Now, these countries that are in this, sort of yellowy color, these were neutral countries, meaning that they did not have a place in any one alliance. Although we talked a little bit about Serbia down here having an affiliation with Russia, that does exist. But for the most part, these are countries here that want to remain neutral. Okay, now it's not discounting their place. The Dutch have an empire, Belgium has an empire. Some of these other players do have empires throughout the world. They just aren't in a position in 1914 to want to, stir up the pot, so to say. All right, they kind of want to be left alone. So, usually I ask this question of, well, if you're looking at this map, who do you think has the advantage? There's sort of two schools of thought to this, right? You could look at this and say, well, Britain, France, and Russia should have the advantage over the Triple Alliance because, look, they're huge countries and they've got them surrounded. And there's good logic in that. On the flip side, you could look at Germany and Austria-Hungary here and say, well, you know what? These are pretty big countries too, and they share a border. So that's actually an advantage because if you're going to go to war, much harder for these nations here to try to coordinate their war effort. These guys here share a border, and if we look at it as one whole, they're pretty big. Now, the simple answer is there's no, that's just for discussion. There's no right or wrong answer on this. But I guess the better question is, who do you not want to be in this circumstance? And if you take a look at this map, you can see, man, oh man, in Switzerland, they're probably not feeling too good. And we'll talk about that's not really the case for Switzerland. And I'll let you think about maybe why that is. But in looking at this here, you might immediately see as well, here's Belgium and the Netherlands. They are not in a desirable spot right now by any means. Not, you can see not big countries geographically speaking. And, by 1914, their great days are definitely behind them. Do they have, some parts of an empire? Yes, they do. But it's relatively small. So they're not the players that they may have been, several hundred years ago. So this, their victims will see what I just simply call bad geography. And geography does contribute to politics and to history in many respects, and this is a good example of that. All right, well, on this map here, we might look at, we've talked quite a bit about the big players, but the reality is that the greatest point of tension that exists in Europe is actually right here. Okay, and that's the border between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. Now, these are two countries here, the Empire of Austria-Hungary and Serbia, which in many ways sees itself as a national state. This is the Slavic people who live in Serbia are largely undesirable. Not undesirable, that's a bad word. They're largely sort of shunned in Europe, right? The Slavic people have had a bit of a rough ride. Now they rally around that, though. They've got a long history here, and they're very proud of that history. But they're not universally loved. Now Serbia, we'll see, as a nation here, had some greater days. In fact, long before this war, Serbia had, in fact, had a good portion of the Austro-Hungarian Empire was sort of under Serbia's umbrella. Well, that's really part of the reason why there's tension. Not long before World War I, we'll see the Austro-Hungarian Empire was expanding, and it expanded into an area over here called Bosnia. And it sort of annexed or took over this territory. Now, Bosnia, the people of Bosnia didn't necessarily want to be a part of the Austrian Empire. And certainly Serbia saw this as a great threat because it basically was saying, listen, you're next on the list here. So the tension over this annexation really is sort of boiling over. And this region of Europe is called the Balkan region. And historians describe this part of Europe at this time as being a powder keg. And, if you think about that imagery, it was a big barrel filled with explosive powder that was ready to ignite, and it would only take a spark to set it off, and the explosion would be enormous. And that's where we will pick up in our next bit.